Hello and welcome. My name is Candice Reid-Bethel. I am the founder and director of Virtuscope VA Services. If you're receiving this, that's because you express interest in attaining your US business registration, your US bank account, and then what happens next. So that's what we're here to discuss with you. So, first and foremost, I am a virtual assistant based in Trinidad and Tobago, and I've been in operation for the past 5 years. One of the things that virtual assistants are great at doing is providing their clients with solutions that actually solve their problems, making life much easier for them. I've been listening over the years, and we've been seeing a lot of changes in our economy where we're seeing that more and more US access is becoming a bit of a challenge. Even for this Christmas period, companies found it difficult to be able to purchase their resources and products as they would because they did not have the access to funding to be able to purchase in the quantity that they are used to. So, what's the solution? Where do we go from here? But that's what we're going to address. This session is intended to give you all the information so that you can make an informed decision as it relates to registering your business within the US, attaining your US bank account. But here's what I'm doing even further than that. I want you to also consider becoming a part of my ecosystem, where after you've attained all of this, you gain credibility, you gain access to vendors, you gain access to collaborators, but most importantly, you gain access to investors. And that's where this is leading up to. So, first and foremost, I want to introduce you to one of our partners based in Delaware, Ms. Chantal Towles, who is going to walk us through the process of registering our business within the US. Chantal will introduce herself, and Chantal comes with a wealth of experience in this particular field. So, without any further ado, Ms. Chantal Towles.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be here with you this evening. So I am the owner of Creative Business Assistants. We specialize in forming LLCs and corporations. I have 30 plus years as an incorporation specialist, business formation specialist. I help entrepreneurs, new startups, existing companies as well, to form new entities across the US. So even though I'm in Delaware, I can incorporate or form an LLC in any state in the US. I do not assist with bank accounts, but I can guide you and assist you in the formation of your entity. So I just want to talk a little bit about what you will need in most states. Some states differ on what you need, but ultimately, generally speaking, they need the same thing. So if you're interested in forming an LLC, we'll start with an LLC. If you're interested in forming an LLC, you have to obviously have the name of the LLC. You have to list the names of the members or managers. Members are the owners. And if you have more than one member, you have to decide who the manager is going to be. And then in some states, you have to list the place of business. So you will have to have a business address. In the state of Delaware, you do not have to have a business address to form the company. All states require that you maintain a registered agent. So the registered agent is a requirement to form any type of business entity, whether it's an LLC or a corporation. The registered agent provides an address within the state of formation for any service or process. So that would be any legal documents. That would be, God forbid you were sued in any case, the registered agent would accept the service or process on behalf of the entity and then forward it to you. In most states, also, the registered agent is required to forward your annual filing. So most states have an annual filing that you have to just submit their annual fee and list, the current owners. So the registered agent is required to forward that to you in time for you to get it filed. So in most states, that's majority of what you need, let's say for an LLC. Name of LLC, name of the members or the managers, and then the registered agent. So what we do is we outsource the registered agent service now to a registered agent in the state, but that same registered agent can handle any state across the country. So that's an LLC. It's very simple. The governing document of an LLC is you also have to maintain what's called an operating agreement. The operating agreement is what I call an internal document, which just means it stays in your internal records. It doesn't get filed anywhere, but you need it to operate with different business scenarios. So the operating agreement will list the name of the LLC, the names of the members, and then the percentage of ownership. So if you ever are doing business in the United States and you ever wanted to get certified to do business as a minority owner, the operating agreement is something that you would use. If you're forming in the U.S. and you're going to open a U.S. bank account, the bank is going to want to see the operating agreement. So that's very crucial. So if it's a corporation, in addition to the name, you have to know who the directors are going to be in corporation. Most states, only require at least one director. And then you have to list how many shares of stock are going to be authorized for the corporation. So if we use Delaware as an example, Delaware, to pay the minimum filing fees up front and to pay the minimum annual fees, they state that you can have up to 1,500 shares. Some companies may choose to have more, and that just means that your fees are going to increase. And then it depends on how you're structuring the stock. So you can have more shares, but it depends on if you have par value or no par value. And that just is the minimum selling price on the stock. So for a corporation, you have to have the names of the directors, a registered agent again, and then the shares of stock. Delaware, if you choose to form in Delaware, most states, I'll just say, take about 2 to 3 weeks. This is a busy time for formations. So currently, I know Delaware is about a month behind if you choose just to file it routinely, but they do have expedited service. So if you choose to pay the additional fees for expedited service, most states you can just file it online. That's what we specialize in, and most states vary. I give a general turnaround time of 2 to 3 weeks, but it really depends on the workflow of the state. So most banks, when you go to open a bank account, they're going to want your corporate documents, which we get back from the state once the entity is filed. If it's an LLC, they'll want to see the operating agreement. Some banks, if it's a corporation, will want to see your minutes and your bylaws, which is a requirement for a corporation. So once the corporation is formed, you just have to keep your records. Your first annual meeting, you have to record that. Your bylaws state what the rules are of the company, like who are the officers and directors, when you're going to have your annual meeting each year. So a bank may want to see that. And then a crucial component is the employer identification number. So if you have a social security number or what's called an ITIN number, which is issued. So let me back up. I'm sorry. If you have a social security number, if you don't have a social security number, so in order to apply for the employer ID number, which is kind of like the social security number for the business or for the LLC or for the corporation, that's applied for through the IRS. If you have a social security number or what's called an ITIN number or a previous EIN, you can apply for the number online and the number is issued to you right away. If you don't, you can list on the form that you don't have one, and then the application can either be mailed or faxed to the IRS. So if you are a company that I'm working with, most of the companies that I work with, I apply for online. If you're considered international and you don't have those things to apply for and it has to be mailed, I can only submit it. I can't follow up on it because it's your company. So just keep that in mind. If you don't have a social security number, then you have to apply for what's called an ITIN number. Or if you had a previous company that had an employer ID number, you can use that to obtain the number online. If not, it would just have to be mailed in. And then once they issue you the number, which normally takes 4 to 6 weeks, they will mail it to you. As far as, like I said, I don't assist with opening bank accounts, but if you are a U.S. entity, most banks are going to want to see, again, a copy of the documents, your employer ID number, known as the EIN. If you are an LLC, the operating agreement, and if you're a corporation, most likely your minutes and your bylaws. So I hope that helps. Most banks won't open up a bank account without an EIN. So just plan accordingly, because if you don't have the components to apply online, it can take up to 4 to 6 weeks. I guess that's what I have as far as forming it.
Right. So Chantal, one of the questions that come about is taxes. So as we are based in Trinidad and Tobago and we're registering our business in the US, in the state of Delaware as an LLC, how does taxes come into play?
Well, if you're not doing business or generating revenue in the US, I'm not an accountant, but most likely you don't have to pay like income tax. So you're not required to pay income tax if you're not generating revenue in the US. But as a Delaware entity, you have to pay what's called franchise tax. So if it's an LLC, franchise tax is due June 1st of every year, and it's $300. So, for example, let's say we submitted for an LLC tomorrow. It's due June 1st, but it's not due till June 1st of the following year. So if you form in 2026, it won't be due until June 1st of 2027. And again, it's $300 for an LLC. And then if you don't pay it by June 1st, well, it'll be due June 1st of 2027, you'll automatically have a penalty, and it'll just keep going up. Like if you don't pay it on time, it automatically jumps up to $500, and it'll just keep growing. So an LLC, franchise tax is $300. For a corporation, it's $125, and it's due March 1st of every year. So again, it wouldn't be due if you're just forming this year. It wouldn't be due till next year. So you would really want to talk to an accountant to see like if what your tax obligations are. Most likely, if you're not doing business here, you don't have to pay taxes. But if you are, you will. So I just don't know how you would want to talk to an accountant as far as income tax, what your requirement is if you're in another country, but you're getting revenue from the United States.
Perfect. Well, you actually answered what was going to be my second question. What happens if you miss your tax payment? So I'm glad that you touched on that immediately.
And let me say one other thing. So what happens is, let's say, and I'll use a corporation as reference. If you don't pay the franchise tax for 2 consecutive years, your corporation will go void. So let's say you have this business, you don't pay the taxes for 2 years. Let's say your company is ABC LLC, and then you go void with the state of Delaware. That name will become available, and you're not. And then you have situations where you might get an opportunity. Someone wants to do business with you, and then you're void. Then you have to file what's called a reinstatement to pay all those back fees to get back in good standing. So that's just something to think about.
Gotcha loud and clear. So one thing, just to reiterate, is that Chantal does not handle the US bank account setup. In a separate session, we will have our collaborators for that aspect of the service come on board to do another session like this with us, and you will get all the information. So what I'm doing is trying to give you the information in bite-sized pieces so that you can digest everything, ask your questions as we go along. So you're not overwhelmed, you're not feeling flustered. You can make an informed decision with ease. All right. So without any further ado, I want to introduce you now to Miss Rhonda Maria Glynn of Zoma Business Solutions. So Rhonda, the floor is now yours.
Good evening. Okay, so here are some of the reasons why you would want to consider converting, because I'm making the assumption that some of the people who will be listening to the recording already have sole proprietorships, and now they're looking into flipping that sole proprietorship into an LLC. Okay, so let's run the numbers because I'm a business strategist. Trinidad has 1.4 million people. The Caribbean has 40 million people. Of those people, at least 65. All right, I wouldn't go as far as 65. Let me be very conservative. 45% of those people are what are considered unbankable. So there are people in the Caribbean who are running businesses. However, they do not fall within the prerogative of qualifying for a bank loan because they don't meet the basic requirement. Notwithstanding that, businesses are still being run. Because I work with female entrepreneurs and women-owned startups, here's some of the reasons why women are opting for converting their sole proprietorships into LLCs. And I'll run some of the numbers. Now, in the Caribbean, women-led SMEs face a deficit, a funding gap of over US $93 billion. That means that all that money does not come within their purview. It means that 65% of female-owned businesses, whether it is Trinidad with 1.4 million, of which 30% of new businesses are owned by women, say access to financing is one of their major challenges. That means that for every business that is being founded by a female entrepreneur, funding is their number one consideration. So think about that for a second. Added to which, even for those who do get funding, the benchmark is 1.3%. So run those numbers for a second. 40 million, of which 30% of startup businesses are owned by women. Those women face a financing gap of over 93 billion with a B dollars. So that is money that they don't have any access to whatsoever. And those who do get, it's less than 1.3%. It means that the majority of businesses in Trinidad, in the Caribbean, that are run by women are not going to survive beyond the break-even. And the break-even is 3 to 5 years. If by 3 to 5 years you have not been able to clear pure profit, then there's a problem in your operations. So some of the reasons why you would want to consider starting or looking into an LLC. One, if your service is a SaaS, service to service, then it means you are having problems to gain clients, and not only gain clients, get paid by clients, because the fintech alternatives are not plug and play. It means that you are not going to, like Stripe or PayPal or any of the fintech alternatives. It doesn't work in your banking environment. So that's one. The second thing is, and this is even the more important consideration, and that is that there are a lot of grants outside there for minority women, for startup companies, for companies owned by Black women. And if you are a sole proprietor, you are not going to have access to those grants, that VC grant, because they do not give money to sole proprietors at all. They do not. That is something that I had to learn the hard way when I was doing the Women's Entrepreneur course in Cornell in 2024. They don't give money to sole proprietors. The other thing is, while there is a compliance, as Chantal has rightly said, you can actually plan for when you are going to flip your sole proprietorship into LLC. So think about it not just as the cost, because there are compliance issues. think about it as a strategy. So let me just share, and if you could share the slide for 1 minute, the red slide first, and I'll go further into the detail. So why do women get into business in the first place? And that's the question that you need to ask when you are making the decision to flip your sole proprietorship, which everybody tells you is cheap and whatever, to an LLC. So for one of the considerations, remember, women said that the majority of their challenges faced within the 3 to 5 year window is access to financing. So why did you start the business? For freedom, control over your time, control over your money, control over your decisions, and the desire to design a life on your own terms. 2 is your purpose, a calling that refuses to stay quiet. This is really why people start businesses in the first place, turning your gifts, your stories, and your experiences into impact. A gift that is monetized and incentivized becomes brilliant, and building something meaningful that aligns with your values. Creating legacy, not just income, because in the Caribbean, female entrepreneurship is part of our shared narrative. However, a lot of the entrepreneurship has been referred to as scarcity entrepreneurship. It is just above a hustle. Then opportunities, seeing a gap that others ignore. As a business strategist, my job is to find gaps and to fill those gaps with a combination of abilities, skills, and knowledge, and solving real problems in your community, creating what doesn't exist as yet. I have a strategic partner in India, and we are building out something that doesn't exist, an ecosystem that doesn't exist anywhere in the world, and being the bold one who steps in instead of waiting. So let's go to the other slide one time, Candice. And the second slide says this is actually what happened. So we're going from the wish list, which is the first red slide, to this slide, which is the anatomy of the barriers. Remember, we talked about 40 million, 1.4, $93 billion gap, 65% of these women saying that access to financing is their number one concern, and the funding that they do receive is less than 1.3%. Now, in Trinidad, there is a lending entity called NEDCO, the National Entrepreneur Development Company. There is a ceiling and a floor for that company. The ceiling is that they are allowed to lend over $250,000 to any startup company. However, they hardly ever give women that kind of money. I have worked with clients who got the money, and the majority of those clients were male clients. When it came to the female clients getting the same amount of money, there were all kind of barriers to access. And in the US, the same situation exists. So the collateral demands, they want assets that you don't have. Up to a few years ago, women were not allowed loans that their husbands or fathers couldn't co-sign on. Short-term, high-interest loans. Because we do not speak the language of money, we literally get whatever they feel to give us. And the perceived risk. Despite the fact that 65 to 70% of households in the Caribbean are female-headed, they still see women as a perceived risk. Although a lot of women are bootstrapping their businesses and they are more detailed, they turn a profit, everything, the perception becomes the reality in the minds of the lenders. And of course, there are financial literary gaps. Because again, we have never been taught the language of money. Money is a language, just like French, just like Spanish, just like any other language. You have to get good with the language, because when you go in to access money, you have to speak that language. And again, the network gatekeeping. Thinking that you're going to go to a female loans officer, and because two of you share the same genetic code, that she is going to give you an easier time, forget that. It is corporate speak. If you cannot make, in the minds of the investor or in the minds of the lender, there are only two questions that the lender wants to find out: what you're going to do with their money and how they're going to get it back. So There have been experiences where people's applications have disappeared. There have been experiences where women have been asked to bring more than the norm to the table. There have been experiences where women came forward with very good business plans and wonderful pitches and got barely enough financing. Again, many times we don't know how much money we want to ask for. So those are some of the reasons why I recommend as a business strategist that when you are ready to scale, so you've gone from ideation to prototype and you have a firm offer, and now you are ready to scale this company, you have to look for excess money. And this is why I recommend that women, the women that I serve, convert their sole proprietorships into LLCs. So think about it not as a financial risk, think about it as a strategic positioning. So you have to change the mindset. You are only, because you are not going, especially those of us who deal with fintech, you are not, until the banking associations within the Caribbean get a wake-up call and realize that the world is digital and flat, we have to exist in this reality. So think about acquiring an LLC as the next strategic movement. And that's it. And that's really why I myself see it as my next logical step, because 85% of the clients that I serve are outside of the Caribbean. So I'm not only selling the source, I'm using it. So that's it for me, Candice.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. I have one final question for Chantal. Let me just pull that up here. And if you can answer this for us, Chantal. Do I need US licenses or permits for online business?
So typically, business licenses are applied for in the areas where you're doing business. So let's just say I know some people in Caribbean might have businesses in Florida, let's just say. So if you had a brick and mortar, or if your type of business dictates that you need a license, then you would apply for a business license, Florida business license, as an example. If you, so typically you don't need it to conduct an online type of business. It really would be more dictated by the type of business you're doing. So like, for example, like if you had an online real estate business, the governing board of realtors, let's say if it was Broward County, they may require you to get a business license, but in most cases you don't. But it really depends on where you're conducting business, meaning where you're physically located, and then what type of business you're conducting. I hope that answers that.
Thank you so much for that. So folks, I just want to take this moment to say, if you are seriously ready to change the trajectory of your business and you want to go this route, reach out to Virtuscope VA Services and let's get the ball rolling. Let's get everything that Chantal listed as is required submitted in a timely manner, and let's get you that LLC. And like I said, in another session, we will treat specifically with just the business account setup. And then after that, we will treat with the ecosystem aspect of it, where we take you into applying for grants, connecting with vendors, connecting with collaborators based on the industry that you operate in. So ladies, Miss Rhonda, Miss Chantal, thank you so very, 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 very much for taking your time to do this with me. I appreciate you ladies so very much. And folks, we hope that you will take in all this information. Feel free to reach out, ask any further questions that you may have that we did not touch on, and we will happily address them for you. So without any further ado,
Thanks for having me. Have a good night.